I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. When I did this agenda, I have public comment on the agenda. I didn't intend to have public comment. It was supposed to be just a coordination meeting, but since I have it on there, is there anyone that would like to make a public comment this evening? Okay. All right, moving on then, we have the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion. I have a motion and second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have initial coordination meeting with Public Utilities Commission regarding Brazos Valley Connection Electrical Transmission Line Project. What I'd like to do is do introductions so everybody knows who everyone is. So if you would please start by stating your name and your position with PUC.
My name is Karen Hubbard. I'm the managing attorney at the Public Utility Commission of Texas in the legal division, and I'm responsible for all CCN transmission in the state of Texas. With me is Mr. Hoke.
Yes, I'm Mike Hoke. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations and External Affairs. I'm the middleman between the agency and the legislature, and responsible for consumer outreach and customer education.
Okay. And what we'll do, we'll go around the table and have everybody here introduce themselves to you. Truett, you want to start?
I'm Truett Bell from the City of Patterson. I'm Sandy Boyd from the City of Patterson.
Good evening, I'm Marie Griffin from the City of Irving.
I'm Debbie Ferris, Mayor of Town of Pine Island.
My name is Trey Duhon. I'm Waller County Judge and President of SubRegional Planning Commission.
Michael Wolf, the Mayor, City of Hempstead.
My name is TJ Johnson. I'm the Waller County Advocacy Group.
Randy Moore-Berger, Mayor of City of Waller.
Kevin Ray, Assistant Superintendent of Waller ISD.
Dan Byfield, American Steward.
Okay. Now everybody has been introduced. I would like to just start off first and foremost by thanking both of you for being here today, for responding to our request for coordination. Our Subregional Planning Commission had a meeting back in November in which we had discussed this transmission line project, and we had decided that we wanted to coordinate this project with the Public Utilities Commission. I know we sent a letter. I know that letter was received. I received some phone calls, and as a result of those phone calls, we're here today. So we appreciate your time, and we appreciate you being here. We look forward to working with the Public Utilities Commission and coordinating on this project to make it something that we can all be happy with. Okay? That being said, I will let now at this time, Karen, Ms. Hubbard, if you'd like to make a statement, you can do so.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I thank everyone for inviting us to be here. We welcome the opportunity to reach out to the communities. We understand what it's like. I've been doing this for almost 6.5 years, and I've dealt with communities over the state of Texas, and I understand your concern. I really am here to disseminate all the information I possibly can give you to help you understand the process and to encourage you to participate in the CCN. First of all, CCN is a certificate of convenience and necessity. And over here I have 4 handouts for everyone. One is called Utilifax. And this is basically tells you what a CCN is. A second one tells you about notice, that this is how to get notice, how to be aware of it, whether or not you would get mailed notice or look for it in the newspaper, or would have to look possibly in a on the website at the PUC, and included in my handout are instructions on how to do that. And the other is how to participate as an interested party. So there's a lot of information here, and when I'm through, I don't plan to do all the talking. I would like to open it up to questions. One of the first things to really understand is that it's the role of the Public Utility Commission, and we do not build the lines. It is the public utility that builds the line, and in this case, it's CenterPoint. What we do is that we provide the process by which the line is certificated. And how that starts is, for CenterPoint, they went through a process at ERCOT, which manages the grid over 80% of the state in this area. They found a need for the Houston Import Project, of which there are 2 lines. Your line will run from Gibbons Creek, which is in Grimes County, down to Zenith, which is in Harris County. And then the other line is going to be built by Cross Texas Transmission. And that will run from Limestone on down to the Gibbons Creek. And so the Gibbons Creek is right in the middle of Grimes County. So they actually are going to have to accommodate both lines. Centerpoint has been working for quite a while on routing. They work with their engineers. This is to the large extent separate from what we do. We meet with them a little to basically check on the progress, but what they will file is going to be their application, their filing. The target date is April 22nd of this year. It may be a little after that. They're working to get the most accurate application they can. The routing it's difficult, as you know. Once they do that, once they file, the Public Utility Commission now has jurisdiction over these CCNs. Up until they actually file the application, there's nothing we can do. They have filed for a docket number, as you will see on the small handout. And what that is basically, it just provides a number that they can put into their notice that they will send the parties who are eligible for mail notice. And they will also include that docket number in the notice that is published in newspapers of local circulation in all the counties that are going to be affected by the CCN. Also, it's provided in the case that you don't fall in any of those categories, or if you don't see the newspaper publication, it tells you how to check the website, and you'll know exactly what's going on at all times. You'll know when it's filed. So with that said, after it's filed, we start this procedure, and you will have 45 days to intervene. Now, interveners are parties to this, and this is going to be litigation. It doesn't go through the district or county courts. It goes through the State Office of Administrative Hearings. So it is an administrative hearing, which is a little different from the hearings you may be acquainted with in a county or a district court. You have 45 days to intervene, and the date is from the date of filing the application. Now, if you live within 500 feet of the center line, if you have a habitable structure within 500 feet of the center line, you're going to receive mailed notice, and it'll be a packet, and it's going to have all the information you need. It's going to have a landowner and transmission case brochure. It's going to have a form for comments, and it's going to have a form for intervention. Now, if you have any property that's crossed by the transmission line, you will also receive notice. That doesn't limit other people from intervening. They also have something they call justiciable interest, and that is something of a gray area. But if you feel you have an interest in the CCN, you're welcome to intervene. Now, that might be, these infringements are scrutinized. They are approved by the administrative law judge assigned to the case. But for the most part, if you can prove a justiciable interest, you have a right to be a party to this proceeding. And I cannot encourage you enough to participate. That is where this is so important. There's also a section for comments. Now, comments do not give you intervener status, and they do not give you a right to participate. But what it does and how it helps us is that we review everything. And the comments may not be somebody who's going to be affected by the line, but they're comments from people within the community. And that's important to us because community values are one of the criteria that we weigh in selecting the location of a line. If you choose to intervene, then you don't need a lawyer. A lot of people do it their own, by themselves. It's called pro se. And whereas the legal staff cannot provide you with legal opinions, but what we can do is that we direct you on how to process these cases and the procedure and how to do it. And we're charged with that, and we're happy to do it. So you do not have to file, you do not have to hire a lawyer. Once you're in these cases, after the 45 days, this case is we anticipate it's going to be very, very contentious. and it will probably be referred to the State Office of Administrative Hearings fairly quickly. We'll just have to see. Once it's there, there's going to be a procedural schedule in place, and that's going to set how we're going to, the time limit for everything that needs to be done to litigate this case. Challenges, there could be a challenge to route adequacy, and all this occurs before the final hearing. Route adequacy meaning is there a sufficient number of routes available? There could also be a challenge as to need, and we understand that that's a concern of a lot of people. Need, we're not sure at this point how it's going to be addressed. Possibly it will be addressed as we litigate the final hearing on the merits and just roll that in. But I cannot tell you right now to you how we're going to do that. But route adequacy, if there is a challenge, will be heard earlier. As an intervener, you will have to file either testimony or a statement of position. We will walk you through that. Participation at the hearing on the merits, you may or may not have to attend. We do not like to drag people from their homes or to have to come to Austin. We will work, the staff will work with you on that. And most of the people who have chosen to intervene and who file either a statement of position or who filed a direct testimony do not have to come to Austin. But that's on a case-by-case basis. That's pretty much the case. This is a critical project. It is supposed to be completed in 6 months. It may or may not. It just depends on all the things that go on. If we cannot do it in 6 months, we will have to extend the deadline a little. Well, it just depends on what happens. And I think that's about it. I'd like to open this up to questions, if anyone has it. If you have questions about the facts or about generally anything I've said or anything. I think the important thing to understand is that the commission simply are the people who ultimately, the commissioners will be the ultimate deciders as to where this line goes. That legal staff, does not take its position until the very last. So we are open. What we do is that we participate in the proceedings. The company will file what they call their direct testimony supporting their case. Later on, the interveners will be asked to file their direct testimony or their statement of position. After that, legal will file their direct testimony. And after we read all the intervener's testimony, we read all statements of position, we read the comments. And based upon that, our engineers will decide what they feel is the best route that meets the criteria. We do not choose the company's route. We do not choose your routes. We choose the route that we think best represents the public interest. But that's based upon everything that's come in and everything that we review. One thing I would like to add, after a hearing on the merits, the administrative law judge takes about 6 to 8 weeks to write what they call a proposal for decision. It's a PFD. Now, you may not agree with that decision. If you do not agree, you have the opportunity to file exceptions and why and how you think it should have read. The case is now sent back to the PUC commissioners, and they will consider the exceptions. They will consider the way the PFD is written. They will consider your exceptions. You will be able to reply to exceptions in case you didn't like the exceptions somebody else had. And ultimately, the decision will be an open meeting by the commissioners. And of course, that will be open to the public and anyone who wants to attend and may attend. And occasionally, people are allowed to speak. So, in a nutshell, that's pretty much it.
Well, I'd just like to add one thing, and Karen, you said it as well, but really to encourage you and your citizens to participate as intervening or commenting, because we really rely on the information that y'all provide. Y'all are here. Y'all know better than we do exactly the considerations of your community, and so we aren't necessarily able to get down on the ground and kind of have that history and knowledge that y'all have here. So we rely on y'all to be able to provide that information, and it's invaluable to the process. So,
Well, I appreciate that. Ms. Hubbard, let me ask you this. You said that this project was a critical project. Can you elaborate and tell us how this project comes to be designated a critical project?
That decision is made by ERCOT when it goes through the process, and they determine that the need is such that the line needs to be in service by the summer peak of 2018. So to do that, it should be processed within 6 months. Normally, a CCN that is not deemed critical will have a year, but once again, I emphasize that is not a statutory 6 months. It can be extended, but that's how it comes about. The decision is with ERCOT.
Now, is that decision by ERCOT, is that approved or endorsed by the PUC in any way, shape, or form, or any process?
We accept it. We don't have any choice. We do it. We accept it for what it is, for what they tell us. We don't question it.
Okay. And I guess the next question I have is, as far as the CNN, you know, we're anticipating that CenterPoint is going to be filing their application for a certificate of necessity for this project later this month, April 22nd, correct?
On or about, yes.
Okay.
That's what I've been told.
Can anybody file a certificate of necessity at any time on any project they want to do?
No, CCN can only be filed by a public utility. Not a public utility can be any of the regulated utilities or some of the co-ops. If there's a transmission line that they need to build that's over 1 mile, that crosses the territory that they serve. For example, CenterPoint can't go and try to build a transmission line in El Paso's territory. I mean, it has to be within their certificated territory. But if it's over 1 mile, yes, then they have to file. But nobody can file it just anywhere they want. I think there was at one point a private line, but people can build a private line if they want. But it takes a lot. It's very unusual.
Okay. Does there have to be a prior determination by ERCOT that there is a need for that project? ERCOT determines the need, and we give that weight, but that doesn't mean that the need is already established. That can still be questioned. Can that, and when you say that can be questioned by the Public Utility Commission?
And it can be questioned by the interveners, by any of the parties, yes. The need is an issue. The fact that ERCOT's decided it, like I said, there's weight given to it, but no, anybody can still question need.
Does the public utility, and let's, maybe for the benefit of the public, can you briefly explain who ERCOT is?
ERCOT is the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. It is the grid operator for about 80% of Texas. And they do everything. They figure out prices, they will determine transmission. I think in this particular case, they have a process which they use through committee, determining if a need exists in a community for a line. And then from there, they determine who's going to build it and where it should go, approximately. But they don't determine the routing. The actual routes are determined by the engineers and by the utility. For example, ERCOT just decided that there's a need for this line to be energized by the summer peak load of 2018, and that it should run from the Limestone substation to the Zenith substation, stopping at Gibbons Creek. And they also determined that Cross Texas would build the northern portion of the line, and that CenterPoint would build the southern portion of the line.
Okay. And is ERCOT, are they a governmental agency, or what are they?
It's a Council of Texas. Is there an official name for ERCOT?
Quasi?
So yeah, they're a quasi-governmental organization. They're a public nonprofit, and they have a board, and they're overseen by the Public Utility Commission. We approve their budget, and so we have oversight over them.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you this question. I know that this is the Brazos Valley Connection Project. I believe that when ERCOT first started this process, there was an initial PUC submittal called the Houston Regional Import Project. Is that correct, or do you know? In 2009?
It may have been. I wasn't a participant in that, so I can't say for sure yes or no.
Okay. I'm just wondering, and if you know the answer to this, who would have started that process? Is that initiated by industry? Is it initiated by CenterPoint? Or did ERCOT take on the project of studying the needs in the Houston area themselves, or do you know?
I really do not know. My guess would be ERCOT, but I really do not know.
Okay. Vince, if you could hit that button, and let's go to the first slide. I just want to go over, and this is also for the benefit of some of the folks that are in attendance here. Obviously, we are the Waller County Subregional Planning Commission. We are created under Chapter 391 of the Texas Local Government Code. This is just the statement of the purpose of regional planning commissions. Obviously, we are created to improve the health, safety, and general welfare of Waller County residents. And we are created for the purpose of making sure that there is a unified and far-reaching development of our region. Obviously, we care about the folks in Waller County. We care about property owners. We care about the value of the values we have here, and we're here to protect those. And that's why we're coordinating with y'all today. Next slide, Vince. Under the, and I apologize, it's kind of small, but under section 391.009 of that Texas Local Government Code, subsection C, it states, in carrying out their planning and program development responsibilities, state agencies shall, to the greatest extent feasible, coordinate planning with commissions to ensure effective and orderly implementation of state programs at the regional level. So again, for the benefit of everyone here today, that's why we're here, is to sit down as equals with the PUC and discuss this project and our concerns about that project going forward. And this is initial meeting. I anticipate we'll have many more meetings probably going forward as this project goes along. Vince, go ahead and go to the next slide. What we want to talk about before I get into kind of the meat and potatoes, the Brazos Valley Connection Project, which we know is a result of the Houston Import Project, which was ERCOT study, is going to be the most expensive transmission expansion project since the CREZ line, with an estimated cost of $590 million. We're very concerned about the analysis that was provided by ERCOT regarding that Houston Import Project, because we believe there are a number of assumptions that went into that study that could be flawed or at best are questionable today, and I'm going to go into that here in a few minutes. I think because of those assumptions, the results of ERCOT's study kind of ends up creating a reliability problem rather than actually addressing the reliability problem. And again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. A lot of this has to do with the growth forecast for the Houston area. And especially, since December 2014, we've had a major change in the economics in the Houston area, especially with the decrease in oil prices and the energy sector. So that's the reason we are here today, is because, and we have some concerns, environmental concerns. I'll kind of touch on those briefly towards the end of the meeting. But we're really not here because we're just worried about, this going across our property. I mean, that's a concern for every property owner, property values, obsolescence issues. But we're concerned that this project is going forward when, in fact, the methodology that was used to determine that there's a reliability need for the grid may be flawed. So we're here today because we want to bring this to the attention of the PUC and ask the PUC to take action in that regard. So we can hold off on the next slide. So basically, our issue with this transmission line, excuse me, is really a question of assumptions and economics. And what we want to ask is whether or not the real world that's unfolding is consistent with the load forecast that was used in the Houston Regional Import Project. The initial PUC submittal of the Houston Regional Import Project was made in 2009, and then it was updated in 2013. At that time, 2009, I think the price of crude for West Texas Intermediate was about $60 a barrel. It later went on to peak at about $106 a barrel. Natural gas was $3.38 per million BTU and later peaked at $6 per million BTUs. Since the project was submitted to the PUC, there's been a lot of advancements, hydraulic fracking, a lot of abundance in oil and gas. Basically, and let me ask you this question. I know, when did ERCOT make their recommendation and deem it a critical needs project? Do you know? Timeline?
I'm believing it was spring of 2014.
Okay.
Thinking around April.
Now, I know once that was accepted by PUC, I know that Calpine and NRG took issue and actually filed complaint challenging the findings of ERCOT. Were you, as an attorney with the PUC, were you involved in that case at all? Or do you-
Peripherally, yes,
Peripherally?
peripherally.
Okay. Do you know just approximately when that complaint was resolved, or I guess when it came to a conclusion?
I believe it was September of 2014.
Okay.
I believe, or on or thereabouts,
Okay.
thereabouts.
And what I'm trying to do, I just want to establish timeline, because from the time that this project has been undertaken by ERCOT in 2009, all the way through 2013, through their decision being endorsed by the PUC, and then even it being challenged, all of that happened prior to December of 2014. So, and what happened in December of 2014 is when Saudi Arabia announced that they were going to be protecting their market share versus protecting the price of oil. So the price of West Texas Intermediate collapsed in December of 2014. In fact, the Saudi Arabia Minister of Petroleum was quoted in Vienna on December 4th, "Why should I cut production?" So oil prices quickly fell below $65 a barrel on Wednesday, December 4th, sliding to the lowest level since September of 2009. And obviously, when oil prices change, it causes rapid changes in the oil and gas industry. U.S. oil production, rig count, we've already seen a drastic drop in the number of drilling rigs. Houston still has an economy that is based, that is primarily energy based. In fact, I'm looking at, this is the ERCOT presentation that was made to this is ERCOT's presentation made to the PUC on April 8th, 2014. And in this presentation, this was done by Jeff Billow, Manager of Transmission Planning with ERCOT. He said that the population in Houston region is expected to grow at a rate of over 100,000 new residents per year, that the gross area product in the Houston metro area is projected to grow at an average annual rate of 3.5%, and that the Houston metro area has almost 40% of the nation's petrochemical manufacturing capacity. So these were all underlying assumptions that went into ERCOT's initial assessment that there was a critical need. And when we say reliability, can you go ahead and explain to everybody what this means, that is a reliability project?
Well, basically, the public utilities are charged with adequate and reliable service. And by reliability, it basically is when you flip the switch, you want the electricity to come on, and you don't want any outages. So that's really a very quick explanation of adequate and reliable service. Reliability project is is to provide reliability. And I think what ERCOT was anticipating that by the summer peak at that time, that by the summer peak load of 2018, they would not have reliability in Houston, meaning they couldn't rely upon the fact that there would be sufficient energy, sufficient power to meet the load.
Okay. And am I correct or incorrect in that part of that analysis is projecting what the growth would be in that particular region?
I'm not prepared to answer what ERCOT's assumptions were.
Do you have, but are you familiar with ERCOT's report?
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you know if they have assumptions in that report regarding or projected growth rates?
Yes. I think that is a part of it. I'm just saying I can't give you an answer for sure what their assumptions were, but I think growth rates were a part of it.
Okay. Do you know if ERCOT's, and I'll have to find it, I've got some here, I might have to come back to it after a break. Do you know if ERCOT was projecting an increase in growth? Oh, here it is. Do you know whether or not, can you state one way or the other, whether or not ERCOT was assuming a load growth rate that was very close to an historical load growth rate of about 1.4%? Do you know if that's correct or not?
No.
All right, and I'll just let you know, this is in the ERCOT Independent Review Houston Import RPG project dated February 20th, 2014. So, and they're assuming that this assumption is valid for power transfer analysis. So, and they have a chart, and the chart shows basically a very consistent growth rate historically since 2002 all the way through 2028. And then that the increased load that would cost, which I'm guessing that would be the reliability, why this project is a necessary project. I guess the next part of my question is, if you will look at, I've got some exhibits marked in front of you. Exhibit 1 is a economic update. This is actually very recent. It's March 19th, 2015. It comes from the Dallas Federal Reserve. If you will look down on toward I guess where it says some large metros feel the effect of a slowing energy sector. It says Houston's employment growth decelerated significantly from 3.5% in the fourth quarter to 0.1% in January due to the slowdown in the energy sector. And then further down, it also talks to that the forward-looking indicators for the labor market look to be climbing to 6% in January. So I'm presenting this to you because I believe this is probably the most recent economic information that we have, that the growth rate in Houston and the coastal region is going to be probably drastically different from what was assumed in 2009 and 2013 when ERCOT did their analysis. I also, for your benefit there's Exhibit 2 is just an article. It actually came out yesterday. I think it's a CNN article. Basically talking about the fallout that U.S. companies have already killed over 51,000 jobs. If you read the article, it'll reference a lot of the oil and gas companies that are located in Houston, such as Schlumberger, Baker Hughes, Halliburton. I think just between those three companies, those constitute job cuts of about 22,400 jobs, and that most of which, many of which, are going to be in the Houston area. So let me ask you this question. You stated earlier that the CNN can be that ERCOT determines the need, but that Public Utility Commission can question ERCOT, or can Public Utility Commission at any point in time ask ERCOT to reevaluate a need, a reliability project?
Well, where we are right now is that, as I said, the determination by ERCOT is given weight, but it's still open to any intervener in this process to question need. So that is the forum. I encourage everyone to participate in the CCN proceeding, to file an intervention. The county can file an intervention. The county judge can file an intervention. Your cities can file an intervention. Your school districts can file an intervention. If you're affected by the line, if any of the proposed routes, and there are going to be many, I mean, like 30 or 40 of them, I'm not too sure how many, but there are a lot. If it crosses anybody's property, if anybody has a barn or a house or any kind of habitable structure, not just a home, that's within 500 feet of this line, of the center line, they can intervene. If anybody feels they have a justiciable interest, you can intervene. And that is the forum, that is the time, and that is the place to question this need. But it has to be done within the judicial proceeding. It has to be done within this docket number at the administrative level. That is the most important thing. I have no power. I'm just the lawyer. And there are 3 lawyers that have already been assigned to this case that are ready to take it on, and I will be managing it. But where we are is that we are just one party, just as you will be a party, and just as the school district will be a party, and just as the city and the mayors will be a party. That's all we are. We're just one voice. The only difference is that in these proceedings, at the very end, We get to come in with our testimony, our direct testimony, and we get to incorporate everything the interveners have said, which will look at the comments. That's not evidence, but what you say as an intervener filing direct testimony, that is evidence. This can be evidence. And then we take the company's direct testimony as well, and we look at that. We don't take anybody's side, but we bring it all together, and we state what we think is the best thing. The administrative law judge may not agree with us. Quite frequently, they don't agree with me. The commissioners may not agree with the administrative law judge. The commissioners may not agree with me. That happens frequently too. But the thing is that this is what the process is about. This is the way everybody's heard, not just people, not just the good people of Waller County, the people in Harris County, the people in Grimes County, the people who are going to be affected by this line. And that is our purpose, to vet this 100%, to listen to everybody, to read what you have to say, and to take it into consideration. And the commissioners are the ultimate deciders. They can decide not to do the line at all. They can decide to go with anybody's route. They can decide not to go with any particular route, but to put together links, kind of like Lincoln Logs almost, to create a good route. Or they can just say, forget it. That's where it goes, and that's why this process is so important, to have everyone participate in, because that's where it can be heard. Without the filing of the case, we have no jurisdiction. But once it's filed, we spring into action. And we encourage, we help you, we'll support, and we cannot give you legal opinions, but we can do everything else to help you out.
Let me ask you some follow-up questions to that. So, do the commissioners of the PUC have any, so once CenterPoint files their application, that begins a legal process?
Yes,
And you have no jurisdiction until that application
That's right.
is filed, correct? So you do not, so you're saying here today, you do not have the ability to tell CenterPoint to hold off and not to file?
I do not have that power.
Okay. Does the PUC and the commissioners have the authority to request that ERCOT reevaluate the Houston Import Project based on current economic reality?
I can't speak for the commissioners. Do they, at this point,
I'm not asking you to speak for them. I'm asking whether they have the ability. Do
At
they
this
have
point?
that authority?
at this point, the authority that they have is when the application is filed. But once it's filed, it has to be completely vetted. It has to go through the process. And at the end of the process, only after everybody's had the opportunity to state their views, everybody's had the opportunity to be asked questions, then they will make that decision, but not until then. I mean, it's a judicial process. And the administrative process is, like I said, it's a lot different from the other process. There's more opportunity for people to participate, and it's a lot easier for people to participate than in my opinion, than in a district or county court proceeding.
Okay, let me ask this question then. Let's say CenterPoint doesn't file their application when they anticipate, or maybe they have second thoughts, or for whatever reason. But the PUC and the commissioners and the executive director, at some point in time, can they, on their own volition, decide, ask ERCOT or request ERCOT to reevaluate based on a change in economics?
I can't answer that. I'm really not sure whether or not they would have that
Whether
or
they
not.
would have the legal authority to do that?
No.
No, it's never occurred before.
Because right now, I mean, we're anticipating an application be filed on or around April 22nd, but that has not occurred as of yet,
That's
correct? Okay. And how often do the commissioners meet?
Well, they meet at open meetings. There's another open meeting scheduled for next Friday, which is the 17th? Which is the 17th. And the thing is, with an open meeting, the commissioners do not communicate between open meetings. The only opportunity commissioners have to discuss anything is at an open meeting. There's a Chinese wall there, and they cannot participate. They cannot talk to each other. We cannot talk to them about a litigated matter. That is called ex parte, and it's taken very seriously. The state bar takes it very seriously as well. So the only opportunity they have to discuss anything is going to be at these open meetings, which happens in front of everyone, and there's a court reporter there at the time. Now, in order to discuss anything at these meetings, you have to get on the agenda. So the agenda has been set as of today. They set the agenda, there's a draft agenda, and then there's a final agenda that occurs, and that came out this afternoon, 7 days. In order to comply with the Open Meetings Act, it has to come out 7 days before the open meeting. So that's been set. So whatever is going to be discussed next Friday is already on the agenda.
I'm sorry.
And they meet about every 2 weeks, about twice a month. Is that-
Usually-
You say to comply with open meetings, it has to be how many days?
I think it's 7 days. Is it 7 days?
Okay. I think it's 3 days, but I mean, go ahead.
72 hours.
72
72
hours.
Well,
I mean, I
it's
know
seven,
that's what
I
I
actually
read.
asked this question this morning. It's
Yeah.
7, we post our agenda 7 days
Yeah, just as a matter
before,
of.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
Okay. Is there public comment? Do they allow public comment?
Not normally, not normally. Only if it's related to an item, an agenda item, and then it's usually up to them whether or not to do it. But they're very liberal with accepting public comment, but it's got to be an item that's on the agenda.
Do they meet monthly?
The open meetings are usually twice a month. Sometimes in the summer, I think there's only one in June and July, but there's 2 this month. There'll be 2 in May. And I can probably give you the dates.
for the next one,
Yeah.
after the 17th.
You can request that an item be on the open meeting, and because this will be filed probably, if it's filed about the 22nd, April 22nd, then it will be a matter over which we have jurisdiction, and you could always request that it be put on the agenda on an open meeting that occurs after the 22nd. Now, whether or not they do that, that's not up to me, that's up to docket management.
And those agendas can be found on the PUC's website?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, let me go back. I think, Ms. Hubbard, when you and I initially communicated, and I was trying to set up this coordination meeting, you had advised me, in fact, you had offered a couple of options. One, for yourself to come down here and meet with us, which you're doing today, thank you. And then the other was to go to Austin and meet with the executive director, correct?
Yes,
Now, he was not able to be here tonight,
that's correct.
and I guess he has other commitments going on
It's-
right now.
I can speak to, during legislative session, he really wanted to come, but, during
Right.
legislative session, he's had a lot of demands on his time, so
Okay,
the
and
timing
the
unfortunately.
executive director is Brian Lloyd, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm just asking, so when you leave here and go back to Austin, will you be reporting to Mr. Lloyd as to how this coordination meeting went?
Mr. Hope will.
Yes.
Okay,
To report directly to him.
okay, good. Let me ask you a couple other questions, and since you were involved peripherally with the Calpine Challenge, I know that in Calpine's complaint, one of the things that they brought up that caught my attention was that ERCOT, I'm just going to read, this is from page 3 of Calpine's complaint. It says, ERCOT has not established that a real reliability problem exists. ERCOT ignored the latest load forecasting methodology that has been utilized in the 2 most recent capacity, demand, and reserves reports, and its own 90-10 extreme weather forecast developed previously. ERCOT instead used interested transmission service provider forecasts. These TSP-provided forecasts showed significantly higher coastal region load growth than any of ERCOT's load forecasts using either the new or the previous methodologies. Using either of the ERCOT load forecast, either the new methodology or the 90-10 forecast, shows that no reliability problem exists. Do you have any information or know why ERCOT did not use the newest methodology or their own 90-10 extreme weather forecast?
No, and as a matter of fact, this matter is still being litigated, that it's been appealed to the district court.
Okay.
So it's still a matter of litigation against the PUCs. I really can't comment.
Okay, and can you tell me where that appeal is occurring at?
It's in the district court. I don't have the number, but I can provide it for you.
Okay. Is that in Travis County?
Yes.
And that would be, and that's an appeal of this complaint?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Calpine and NRG have appealed.
Okay, so that's docket number 42511, public complaint of Calpine Corporation and NRG against ERCOT and appealing the decision concerning the Houston Import Project.
Yes, but now it's got a different style. I think it's against the PUC. It's the
Okay.
style.
So,
Basically, the PUC's been sued.
So this has been appealed to a district court
Yes,
judge?
yes. And it's ongoing.
It's ongoing, okay?
We can get you the number. I don't have it with me
Can I
though.
ask a question?
Yeah,
In that particular instance, Ms. Everett, if that's on appeal, then if the CCN is filed on the 22nd, can PUC officially take jurisdiction over that application if this is still being adjudicated?
Yes, they run concurrently because one is the CCN and the other was the complaint by Calpine and NRG against ERCOT. So they run concurrently because it's not the same thing. It's what we deal simply right now is with the routing of that CCN, of the location, the routing, the location, the expense, and the people it affects. So it's not the same subject
So
matter.
what would happen if this litigation is decided against ERCOT on this particular line? Then what does the PUC, what will the PUC do?
I don't know. I can't speculate as to what that is. But it's a very good question.
it seems like maybe the district judge needs to put a hold on everything until that issue gets discussed. I mean, we're talking,
Maybe you need to intervene in that lawsuit.
and Ms. Hubbard, I hope you understand, I mean, the way I look at this is you have these studies that have been done that have certain assumptions into them. But you're talking about a $590 million project. Now, CenterPoint is not, last time I checked, they're not a charitable organization. They're in this to make money. They build transmission lines, and eventually the cost of those construction projects, they get that money back, plus there's a profit margin that goes into that, and that goes on to the consumers.
Yes.
So not only am I concerned about the landowners, the property owners, people that are going to have land possibly condemned, taken, the natural resources we have here, threatened species, endangered species, the impact of the way of life in our county, the obsolescence issues, the drop in property values, which could negatively impact our tax base, which is something I'm concerned about. But I'm also concerned with the fact that, it's a project that would place $590 million on the backs of consumers. And ultimately, if that court case gets determined that ERCOT's assumptions were wrong and that growth is going to be flat or different, and there actually is not a need, much less a critical need, I guess you can understand our concern.
I certainly do. I certainly do. And this is our concern as well. But we move forward in the manner that's expected of us. If an application is filed, we are charged with processing it. So when they file that application, we do not have a choice. We have to process it. We do it in the most efficient manner we possibly can. And the cost is of great concern to us too. And the effect it has upon your community is a huge thing. Community values are one of the criteria that we evaluate. Texas Parks and Wildlife has already filed one letter, and they'll file another one after the application is filed. And it's my understanding they're going to participate in this docket. Everything is considered in this. Airports, there's 27 different criteria, and they're listed if you go to the website that's on the bottom of the how to participate. At the very bottom, the very small print, it's going to direct you to our website, and there is under Certificate of Convenience and Necessity, there's a whole list of things. One of these things is the landowner and transmission cases brochure, and that's going to be more in depth in giving you information on what the considerations are. But this is a matter for us always, and the expense is huge. The $590 million, though, I do want to point out, is for the entire line. It's from the line that runs from Limestone to Zenith. So that also incorporates the cross Texas transmission portion as well. But it is uplifted, yes, that's true.
Let me go ahead, and I think I've covered basically, so really from our standpoint, there's been a major change in circumstances regarding the economy, growth forecast going forward. Depending on, I'm not gonna spend time, I mean, these are articles, this is from the Real Estate Center of Texas A&M, how oil drives the Houston economy and the economy drives the real estate. Effective low oil prices on production. This is from the Bush School, Baker Policy Institute, February of this year. These are all current. All saying that oil prices may stay low for a sustained period of time, and it's going to have a lasting impact. So it gets to the point, if we're going to go down the road and they file the certificate for the application for the certificate, everyone is going to spend an enormous amount of time and resources on a project that ultimately the district court could determine ERCOT was wrong. Now, do you know where that is in the process as far as the appeal?
I'm not sure, it's fairly early,
Is it?
but I'm not sure where, because once the PUC is sued, in the sense that a decision by the commission is placed on appeal, it goes to the Attorney General's office, and legal no longer participates. So I really don't know.
I want to also touch, Vince, can you go to the next slide? These are some other issues or concerns. There we go. This is in addition to the economic forecast. I just want to touch on these briefly. We do have a number of endangered or threatened species that are located in Waller County, which include but are not limited to the Houston toad, which is a federally listed endangered species. Southern crawfish frog, which is rare. And then we have several state threatened species, the bald eagle, the peregrine falcon, white-tailed hawk, ibis. I'm just calling your attention to these because I want to know, do you know at this point whether an environmental impact statement is being prepared or has been prepared or will be prepared?
Texas Parks and Wildlife has taken an initial view of this, and they will file a letter in the docket after the application is filed. And I can tell you that having dealt with Texas Parks and Wildlife for many, many years, they are very efficient in everything that can possibly be listed will be listed. And it's my understanding they are going to participate in this docket. So that they will cover this. And as a participant, you can certainly call them. I know their lawyer; he'll be happy to talk to you.
Do you know? And I appreciate that, and I'm sure we will. When you say they will file a letter, is that basically just taking a position on whether or not an environmental impact statement should be prepared, or is that actually doing their own environmental analysis?
That is their environmental analysis, and we give great weight to that as well. We consider it, and frequently they will also file testimony if they participate in it. They don't participate in all the dockets, but they do in the ones over which it's my understanding they do participate in the ones over which there are some serious environmental concerns. And I would imagine that they would participate in this one as well, and they'll probably file direct testimony if they do.
What would trigger the necessity, or for somebody to, what would cause someone to say, okay, we need an environmental impact statement that complies with federal law because of what various issues? How would that happen?
Well, usually when the application is filed, the engineers have done what they call an environmental analysis, and that covers everything. So usually that's just what we work on, from the environmental analysis provided by the engineers and from the analysis by Texas Parks and Wildlife.
So I guess I'm trying to understand if it's an environmental analysis, that is not the same as an environmental impact statement, or is it?
I'm not sure. That's what we rely on. Maybe somebody else
No,
knows
it is
that.
not.
It is not.
Is not. Can I say something real
Yes.
quick? We helped some folks in Mason County on actually I think it was the CREZ transmission line, and this issue came up in Mason County, and we specifically asked, the PUC actually came and met with us with that planning commission in Mason County, and the question was asked, this very question, if an environmental study was being done. And of course, that's not your purview, so the answer was, that's not our purview, we don't know. And so LCRA was involved, And we asked LCRA. Well, LCRA claimed that there was no need for an environmental study, although Mason County, like Waller County, has the Houston toad, which is a federally listed endangered species. And come to find out, Mason County had federally listed endangered species as well. So what we did was we invited U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who is the overseer, unlike Texas Parks and Wildlife, for the federal, and come to find out they were already doing an environmental impact statement study. And LCRA was caught red-handed lying basically to the planning commission, like the judge, and it was the judge there. And so I guess, Judge, what I'm going to suggest is that this planning commission invite the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to a meeting, and we'll ask that very question. And if not, I guess the question's going to be, well, because of that Houston toad sitting up there, why are you not doing a proper environmental impact
And
study?
I would welcome that. But as far as what we have now, what we normally rely on are just those two things that I mentioned.
understand that. And that just, that's, we found out in Mason County that wasn't sufficient. You know, we had to go to the source, and I would recommend to y'all do the same thing.
I also want, Ms. Hubbard, if, exhibit number 3 in front of you, there is a copy of a resolution, I believe.
Correct.
This is a resolution passed by this Waller County Subregional Planning Commission. This was actually this past Monday. I want to make sure you have, and I've got, obviously the exhibits are going to stay with the court reporters, but on each one of these I put extra copies for y'all to keep, and also hope that these documents get distributed to the Public Utility Commission. But obviously we've taken the position that there's not a necessity for this project, and we are recommending the no-build alternative. So we just ask that this information and this resolution be conveyed to the executive director and the commissioners, if that's possible.
I'd like to say I cannot speak to the commissioners because that's considered ex parte, but I believe I can file this in the docket once it is filed. Once the application is filed, I can file this in the docket.
Okay. Can you provide a copy of that resolution to the executive director?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you've got the letter too, right?
Yeah. The next thing, and I do want to also give the other commission members an opportunity if anyone else has questions. I believe, Debbie, did you have some questions regarding high-speed rail?
Yes, I was just wondering if the Federal Railroad Association or the Texas Railroad Company or TxDOT has disclosed to the PUC and/or ERCOT that they would be using the electrical power from the Brazos Valley transmission line from the Limestone County for this high-speed rail. The Federal Railroad Association at a Waller meeting, open meeting, said they planned on relying on the transmission line to supply electrical power to the train. So it's not going to be used strictly to help Houston. So if that's not about, if so, it's not about the source of the reliability to the city of Houston. So has the PUC been aware of, has anyone disclosed that they're going to be using those transmission lines?
I am not aware of that at all, but that would be an excellent question to bring up during the pendency of the case and ask the appropriate party.
To the extent you can tell me, I mean, do you know if you or have you had any communications with TCR, Texas Central Railway,
No.
regarding their project? So you're not aware of whether or not there's ongoing discussions between PUC and TCR regarding high-speed rail?
I don't have any idea.
Go ahead.
Although you stated, and I want to clarify this, that there is some consideration given when a utility or a transmission line goes to an area that they don't have distribution of. A lot of the lines are showing up this way, and the line does not have anything any closer than the eastern side of Prairie View and out a few miles north of Waller. So would this area up here be classified as they couldn't use it for their transmission line? Clarify that.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the maps. I'm not, you'd have to look at the maps of the areas that are certificated to CenterPoint. Now, distribution is a little different. So, because like Reliant is the rep, which is the representative of CenterPoint. So CenterPoint essentially bills rep, they bill Reliant, and then Reliant bills the consumer. So it's a different process. So it's CenterPoint really doesn't have, does not bill directly the consumer. Your relationship is with Reliant. But as far as certificated area, I would have to look at the maps.
Well, I have some intimate knowledge on where it is and everything, up their polls for, but, my question was, if they're wanting to come down some of these, bad routes, zigzag, and everything, through northern Waller County or northern Hempstead, is that considered a no-no, and they can get back over and come through their territory?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, they propose a lot of different routes, and those routes are they're consistent of links that within the routes. And you'll see when they file that one route, they'll have one route like with links A, B, C, D, and Route 2 may have E, F, G, H. But you can put those links together to form a completely different route, even though they're noticed links. So when you look at a route wondering where it goes, remember that you can always change that a little bit by modifying it and changing those links. As long as the links, everybody's been noticed who has property or habitable structures along those links, you can always modify it a little bit and change it, and that's perfectly acceptable. And you can make that presentation.
We'll say San Bernard's territory, when they have territory back on the eastern part of the county.
Well, they have to stay with, CenterPoint has to stay within their certificated territory, but beyond that, like I said, I'd have to look at the maps. They have to stay within their territory.
The map, I remember seeing the vast majority of the lines were not in the Reliance territory.
Like I said, I'd have to see the maps. I'm
I know, I
sorry.
got you at a disadvantage.
I'm sorry, yeah, but remember, Reliant is the representative. It's not the utility. So that's one of the things to consider.
I know where their lines go and everything, and all this back up this way, which is totally out there.
Yeah, well, the rep is the retail electric provider, and that's like Reliant, Jexa, TXU, all of those, Green Mountain, Champion, there are so many of them.
I was just trying to clarify, if we could keep, if the transmission line comes in, can we keep it in the eastern part of Waller County in their territory instead of them advancing up here?
Well, you can take their proposed routes and look at those, and if you're not happy with those, frequently interveners will create their own route by selecting different links that have been noticed, putting them together to create a route that's acceptable to them, and we review that, and that's also considered. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question exactly. I didn't get the best.
No, not quite, but it's still.
Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask?
Judge, I just have one. You said earlier that this is declared a critical needs project, and that entitles Center for ERCOT to basically a 6-month review process, but not limited to a 6-month review process.
Well, it's the PUC. In other words, it says it should be completed within a 6-month time frame, but if we go over, it's not, and we frequently do in these type of projects.
And that seems to be an advantage to who's ever declared a critical needs project to have it recommended in 6 months. Are there any other stipulations that go with being declared a critical needs project other than a 6-month review?
Basically, it's suggesting a 6-month review. But the last few that we've done have run 8 months, maybe a little longer. They've been critical needs.
So they don't get any other advantages for being declared a 6 months?
I don't think, not to my knowledge. Not that I can think of at the moment anyway.
You also said Texas Parks and Wildlife already filed a letter.
They filed, I think they give the company one that's included in their application. And that will be in the application, so you'll be able to see, and there'll be another one that's filed later on. Because frequently, as with the public meetings, the routes that are presented are not always the exact routes that are present in the application. And the reason for that is that they take the input that they've received at the public meetings from individuals and will make changes that are necessary. And it's my understanding that when an initial letter from Texas Parks comes in, they also take that in consideration in presenting their final routing suggestions. So you'll be able to see that.
I have a couple follow-up questions. You know, we have an existing line that currently runs from Gibbons to the Zenith substation. Is there preference given to existing right-of-way over taking brand-new right-of-way for a project?
On occasion, yes. Not always. We have, reliability is a problem. If you put two 345s together, you got to make sure that there's not going to be any problem between the two of them. And beyond that, you're going to have to talk to an engineer rather than a lawyer. But let's say, yes, there are cases which they can do different things with that. And there is a slight preference if there are other factors that are amenable to it.
I had a discussion with somebody, and they were saying that there are certain that Public Utilities Commission has kind of a list of preferences where they,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
Can you tell me what that, you know, what's number one on the list, two on the list, do you know?
You'll have to, if you, I don't have them in front of me, but I think if you pull them up on the website that I have on this page, you're going to be able to see them. They'll be there.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, there are 27 of them, and I don't have them in my.
And what do they call, what is on?
It's just the
certain-
criteria that's
Criteria.
considered, yeah.
And those aren't rank order.
No, it's not rank order there. No, thank you. It's not rank order at all.
Okay,
They all are considered to be of equal weight.
okay. Questions, Sam?
Yeah, has there been any other consideration on how power can be supplied in other ways other than having transmitted from another source somewhere else, but creating the energy closer to Harris County?
That would be with ERCOT. Like I said, it's not something that I'm privy to. I really don't know. Sorry.
Anybody else? What I'd like to do at this point, we have a letter that I have drafted, or actually I should say Dan has helped me draft. I'd like to go ahead and read this in the record and then have some discussion with the commission members on whether or not I'm authorized to sign this letter. This is directed to Brian Lloyd as the Executive Director of the Public Utilities Commission regarding the Brazos Valley Connection Project. And it says, Dear Mr. Lloyd, the Waller County Subregional Planning Commission appreciates the willingness of the Public Utilities Commission, represented by Ms. Karen Hubbard, to meet with us regarding the Brazos Valley Connection Project proposed by CenterPoint Energy, referred to as the Houston Regional Import Project. The original Houston Regional Import Project was filed in July 2009 and updated in July 2013 by CenterPoint Energy. At the time of the study, oil and natural gas prices peaked at $106 per barrel and 6 million BTU. Since the project was submitted to the PUC, advancement in hydraulic fracking technology has resulted in an abundance of oil and gas. Then in December 2014, 10 months after the ERCOT independent review of this project, the price of West Texas Intermediate crude collapsed. Since that time, production of oil and natural gas has plummeted with a corresponding dip in actual rig counts, resulting in a sharp decline for growth and the economy in the Houston region. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas recently issued their regional economic update on March 19, 2015, stating, Houston's employment growth decelerated significantly from 3.5% in the fourth quarter 2014 to 0.1% in January due to the slowdown in the energy sector. Unfortunately, this means a dramatic loss of jobs and layoffs, most notably from Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, and British Petroleum. At least 22,400 jobs lost collectively. So far in 2015, over 51,000 jobs have been cut by U.S. companies as a result of decreasing oil prices. Both CenterPoint and ERCOT assumed in their studies for this particular transmission line that the Houston area was going to have historical growth. With the collapse in energy prices and the expectation that energy prices will continue to be low for an extended period, the growth assumptions previously touted are all difficult to justify. As a result, the Houston Regional Import Project and ERCOT load growth assumptions no longer reflect the future, and we therefore request the following of the PUC. 1. recognize the urgency of the Houston Regional Import Project has dramatically changed, and in order to do what is right for the citizens of Texas and Waller County, delay the acceptance of the CNN request of CenterPoint at this current time. 2, have CenterPoint update this project to reflect lower long-term growth in Houston and the coastal area as opposed to the current assumptions being relied upon. And 3, require ERCOT to update the ERCOT Independent Review of Houston Import RPG Project, February 20th, 2014, by reevaluating the alternatives to meet the coastal area loads and reevaluate the options based on a level playing field between adding local generation in the coastal area versus building a new transmission line along with other alternatives. ERCOT's load projections used to justify this project and the independent review of 2014 no longer reflect the economics of Texas. The collapse of oil and gas prices has reduced growth across the state and has impacted the coastal region significantly, and Houston specifically. In addition, we will be following up with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to make sure all requirements of the Federal Endangered Species Act are being considered regarding endangered species in our county by requesting a proper environmental impact statement be performed. These issues, along with the economic changes, demand the previous studies be reevaluated and reconsidered, giving time to validate or invalidate the building of this new infrastructure. We simply ask the PUC do what is right for our state and the citizens of Waller County. Respectfully, Waller County SubRegional Planning Commission, Trey Dumont, President. I would entertain a motion if we have one.
I make a motion to use this levy.
Okay, I have a motion and second to authorize me to sign this letter on behalf of the commission. Open it up for discussion. Hearing no discussion then, all in favor of issuing this letter to Mr. Brian Lloyd, indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. So I will sign this letter and present it to you, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would present this letter to Mr. Lloyd. We did put on here to be CC'd to Ms. Nelson, Kenneth Anderson, and Brandy Marquez, the chairman and the commissioners. Can that be done by Mr. Lloyd's office, or do we need to undertake that ourselves?
Well, when it gets filed in the docket, it'll be part of the record that the commissioners will receive.
When you say file in the docket, that would be after the certificate of necessity is application?
After that.
Correct.
Okay, but you'll present this to Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Upon your return? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll just.
Tomorrow morning.
We'll just undertake we'll make sure it gets delivered to the commissioners independently. So I know you have a conflict of interest. Or ex parte communications. At this time, does anybody else have anything else to conclude with?
I'd like to add one thing.
Yes, ma'am, please.
One thing I really would like to emphasize is that we are a blank slate as far as legal is concerned, the attorneys who will be processing this. And when I mean a blank slate, we neither support nor oppose this line as it is, as it's filed. What we are charged with is a little different than the utility which presents its case. And it's different from the interveners who present their case, because we represent the public interest. And what we do is that we take everything together and try to figure out the best way that suits people. We will interact with the interveners during the course of this case. But ultimately, we have to take a position. But it is also charged upon us by the commissioners to present a robust case that has all these different opinions so that they're able to make a good decision based upon a great deal of evidence and hopefully make the best decision as to where this line will, whether or not it will go anywhere, and if it does, where it will go. Thank you.
Well, with that note, we do appreciate you traveling here and being with us today. We thank you for your time. I hope you understand this is, we are trying to undertake this in the spirit of cooperation and coordination to be partners with you because I think to the extent that we can work together, it'll be more efficient, it'll be a better process for everybody involved. I would hope, we anticipate there probably will be follow-up meetings. You would be open to, would the PUC be open to continuing coordination meetings with us in the future?
I would have to check. That's that's above my station. We would always, we welcome the outreach. Once it's filed and it becomes a litigated matter, I would have to check with the director and the ED first, but I would welcome always the opportunity to discuss this matter with anyone.
And not to, I mean, the PUC does understand they, under the Texas Local Government Code, that they have an obligation to coordinate with us.
Oh,
correct?
yes, oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Dan, do you have any?
Trey, do we have? With David?
Yeah, I guess we can keep it, I want to be respectful of their time, but, yeah, of course.
That's up to you, you know.
Do you have a question?
Well, I had two, and you can pick one or answer both, but I guess my first question is, and again, I appreciate you guys being here.
Just, for the record, since you didn't, can you introduce yourself for the record?
So I'm Justin Beck, I'm the county commissioner for Precinct 4, Water County. And you had said, you know, obviously you guys represent the public interest, and one of the questions I had was, you know, obviously needing, so nobody wants anybody to turn on a light switch and not have power, or AC, especially in Texas. But as far as, you know, considering the public interest, who is the one that considers other alternatives? Because obviously CenterPoint, they are going to make money off of building a close to $600 million route. Well, and that would not, that's the entire route. But the amount of people that are going to be affected by the entire line versus supplying the need, where is that analysis considered? Because if you figure how many miles and how many hundreds of people and how many hundreds of acres are going to be affected, you know, and especially when you say, correct me if I'm wrong, you said there's 20 to 30 proposed routes?
I'm not sure how many there are because usually there are that many. I would have to wait to see the application.
So, I mean, if we're just trying to, you look, you know, basically you would notify anybody that's 300 feet, that has a structure within 300 feet or a property line within 500 feet, there's 20 to 30 of those, that could be a huge swath of Waller County.
Yes, it is. It's
So
huge.
we're not really sure, you know, of who it's going to affect. And so I guess my question is that could be a lot of people potentially. And so if that transmission of that power is not going to benefit, you know, the citizens of Waller County, who's the person that would, or the organization that would consider other options like Sandy said, a generator substation that would affect zero property in Waller County? It would supply Houston with their needs and affect just their residents. I know you said that's not y'all's call, but who would do that?
Well, actually, these are all important items that can be brought out during the course of the proceeding. One of the first things when you mention routes, and also it's a house for a 345 kV line, it's 500 feet from the center line for a half-inch structure or any land that it crosses over.
Which is, I mean, 500 feet across the street.
Yeah.
Which is not a whole lot. So I mean, if I own my property starts right here, you're gonna put a big line right
Well,
there.
that's where the justiciable interest comes in. That, you know, they consider everything. And one of the first things that happen in these type of cases is what they call a route adequacy challenge. And it's very possible this may have one. And that is where you challenge whether or not the routes that they have are adequate. Do they have enough of them? Are they spread out over a certain length of time, or the too width, or are there too many that go in this area, or are there too many that come from this substation? There are lots of issues that arise, and that we have a full hearing on that. So that would be the first time.
When you say that the PUC represents, or you know, you, the legal body represents the public interest, obviously the public that has an interest in needs more power is Houston. The public interest of the citizens of Waller County and Grimes County does not. And so the public interest, in my opinion, would be figure out a way for us to get power to them directly in their backyard, and take that almost $600 million and figure out a way not to affect all the residents and the acreage that's between here and there. And that's just my opinion, and that's my comment, and I know you can't, you don't
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone in the audience has a burning desire to ask a question? If not, we're good.
I have one question.
You have, now I know you, you've never had one question.
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep it one question. Going sort of what Justin said, there are power lines that CenterPoint is trying to reach across counties that won't be benefited by the impact of what CenterPoint is trying to do. Along those lines, those very property owners that this particular line will affect have already been affected twice. Does that ever come into anyone's consideration?
It will. You need to intervene, and it will come into consideration. Yes, that is considered. That's why we encourage everyone who's affected by this to intervene, to let your voice be heard, so that we can evaluate it, we can talk to you, and we can figure out what is the best thing to do.
Okay, like Craig said, I have one more. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a grandmother who keeps her grandkids, and I care about my property. How do you intervene and sound intelligent enough to be considered?
Well, if you intervene, we'll help you with the rest.
Okay, that's a deal.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
My name's Claudine Nelson. I'm a lifelong resident of Waller County. And my question is, once your line that you're proposing, whichever one of the 20 to 30 lines it may be, that you choose, and you say this is the line, okay? You say that it's somewhere that out of Waller County, thank God, and we're not going to, and is approved. At that point, can that line be changed? Because you said y'all can make alterations. Can it be changed, and if so, could your change come into Waller County?
Well, they have to go by the published and noticed routes. But what you can do, so everything that you will see on the map is what they call a noticed route. And you can take links, like little pieces, you'll see like links A, B, C, and take A out and maybe make it connect with F instead of B, and that will create a new route. And as an intervener, you have the latitude to do that and to make that suggestion, and that will be considered. But going beyond the routes and the links that are published, there are a few things we call minor deviations that the company will do to work with the landowner, so they don't have to cut down that 200-year-old tree or go through somebody's septic tank, or something like that. Yes, they can do minor deviations, and they do work, and they are charged with working with the landowner for those.
Okay, first of all, we know how the publications work, almost to none, because we found out about this basically through Facebook. Had I not, I've never seen it in the papers or anything else, so we know how that goes. But what my question is, once you set that line, can it cross back over into our county by moving A, B, C, or D?
Once the commissioners decide on a route,
Okay,
that's it.
so your answer is no.
No, it cannot. Once they decide, once a final order is entered, deciding on a final route, that is the route. That's it. The only difference is that the orders do make the accommodation for a minor deviation, and that is, as I said, so that they can go around if there's a pipeline they didn't know about, or there's a structure they didn't know about, or if there's, we've made deviations. They have made deviations for oak trees or various things like that. So they will work with the landowner. They have to work with the landowner with those. Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, those are talking, just slight things, not,
Slight,
outside the county.
no, not 10 miles. We're talking about,
Couple,
just
yeah.
a couple feet. Okay.
And Mary Ann, hold on, just 1 second. Would you stand up and state for the court reporter's benefit?
I'm Mary
Well, right here on the front.
Oh, no.
Me?
Yeah, you state your name.
I can say my name.
Can you state your name, please, for the
I'm
record?
Rhonda Jordan.
Rhonda, thank you. Okay, Mary Ann, you're up.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Piacentini. I'm the director of the Katy Prairie Conservancy, and we protect about 20,000 acres of land on the prairie. About a third of it is in Waller County, so we're very interested in most of the lines. At least 4 of the suggested actually cross our lanes. But my question is, you made a comment, Ms. Hubbard, about the fact that the PUC, the commissioners, can actually ignore staff, can ignore the, recommendations that are made. So I want to know two things. One is, can they ignore the administrative judge if he approves that appeal and says that it really should be cogeneration and there's not a need?
Oh, okay, no, they can, okay, the
Second part.
the need, the appeal by NRG and Calpine is out of our hands. That's through the district judge. That's entirely different. But the CCN determination that goes through the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and this is just to determine the routing. Once that proposal for decision, the administrative law judge makes that decision, like I said, everybody has an opportunity to accept or whatever, and then that comes back, when that comes back to the commission, they can change it, they can decide not to do the line, they have complete latitude over how they choose to treat it. They've made changes, they have the ability to make that choice. And in fact, in one of the cases several years ago, they decided not to allow the CCN, and this was a CREZ, and then went back and tried again. So we tried again.
I can see her face, I cannot hear her.
Okay, can you
Okay.
speak up now?
Okay.
And
Sorry.
go ahead and face forward if you
You
can.
don't
Sorry.
Marianne, why don't you come around here?
Let's do that, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
What was the question again?
The question was, if you mentioned that the PUC commissioners sometimes disregard staff recommendations, make
Yes.
their own determinations.
Yes.
And they sometimes disregard other aspects of the case. And so my question was, if the administrative law judge decides that the Calpine and NRG appeal is valid, and it says, we agree with you that ERCOT's findings were wrong, or they should have used the newer model, can the PUC say, we don't really care what the administrative law judge says, we're still going to go with the certificate of convenience and necessity?
Okay, first of all, just to clarify, it's not the administrative law judge who would make that decision on the Calpine NRG decision, it would be the district judge.
Okay.
Okay, so just put that over here right now.
Okay. Can they ignore the district judge then? So,
No,
okay,
no.
okay. So that would stop that process.
Well, the appeal process is such that you go from the district court, and the district court decision is appealed to the third circuit and to the appellate court. And usually, well, it doesn't always, it depends. Sometimes if that court's dockets are too heavy, they send it to a different appellate court. But it goes to the court of appeals.
Okay.
And then it can go from the court of appeals to the Supreme Court. So it's a long process, and it takes
So it is
years.
the case that the PUC could continue the process for the CCN?
For the CCN.
CCN, and actually approve it and get construction started, and we could still be in the courts for the appeal.
I would not deny that as a possibility.
Okay, that's the first question. The second part of the question is, when you intervene, does the commission seem to put more weight on scientific and engineering analysis and study? So I know we've already got a lawyer, and we're already looking at expert testimony. But are they going to look at things that challenge the model analysis that they use, the fact that ERCOT used an older model and didn't really update it after they'd given CenterPoint the authority to move forward? Or are they going to look at community values? Are they going to look at who yells the loudest? What makes the difference to them?
You know, that's the commissioners, and I can't second guess, but I can tell you everything is considered, and everything is given equal weight. Now, when you're in a hearing on the merits, which is the final hearing on these, the experts are usually cross-examined or subject to cross-examination. So those are more thoroughly vetted. And frequently, the positions of interveners, lots of times they don't want to participate. Will still enter their direct testimony, which is evidence. Statement of position is not evidence, and we'll explain it later. But everything is considered, and it wouldn't be fair to say one thing is given greater weight than the other.
I would say loud volume of voice is probably not given as any more weight than the other.
Right.
Well, yes.
And the last thing is, there is another endangered species that's in the county, which is Texas prairie dog, which is also federally regulated. So, but it's a plant, not quite as important, but
I guess I just would follow up one, and this kind of ties in with what Mary Ann, your answer. So I mean, it is feasible, it is possible, since this is on a 6-month fuse, with the once the application gets filed, you've got a 6-month fuse. Meanwhile, you've got a district court case questioning ERCOT's analysis. That if the line gets approved, CenterPoint goes forward and builds a line, and then later the district court comes out and determines that ERCOT's analysis was flawed, the methodology was incorrect, and the correct methodology actually determines there's not a need, we could end up with a $590 million transmission line that there was no necessity for.
I cannot speculate, I'm sorry, I cannot speculate on what would happen. Anything's possible.
As the
But
PUC,
I think there would be, I just can't speak for what the commission would do. I think this is under consideration. You must also understand that need is going to be folded into this process. That need will be vetted in the litigation of this case. So that's going to be an issue too.
has the PUC ever approved a line that was not deemed a necessity by ERCOT?
Need is very important. It would, no, they would always, not ERCOT, I don't know the history to that extent.
That there hadn't been a determination that there was need.
We have history going back to 1975. I've been there for 6.5 years. To my knowledge, within the last 4 or 5 years, no, but that isn't, that's just very recent history. I can't
I
do
understand the
the history.
critical, the district court case goes to the whole heart of the matter. And the labeling of this project is a critical need project. And it seems like if there's a chance that we could be getting ahead of ourselves, the project should be put on hold until the district court resolves that issue, one way or the other. Because otherwise you risk a $590 million mistake. So anyway, that's just my comment. So with that, if nobody else has an overwhelming burning need, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion? Second. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned.